Okay. Thank you for meeting with me today. I just want to share with you some of the research that I've come up with in my project here and share some recommendations and some stuff that I found. So thank you for being willing to meet with me.
You're welcome.
All right. So my school improvement action plan, just to give you some background of where this is coming from. We were doing some study on culture versus climate, talking about school culture and school climate and things that we thought needed to be improved based on data from the North Carolina Teacher Working Conditions Survey and the Insight Survey. And we focused on areas of empowerment, leadership, that's teacher leadership, as well as current like administrative leadership, facilities, resources, time, and parental and community involvement. Some of those areas are a little bit bigger than others as far as where the data came from. But we focused on all of those. So all of the information that we'll kind of talk about and the recommendations I'll share, we'll touch on some of those areas. So if we start, we'll start with empowerment. So again, this data, this information comes from mainly the North Carolina Teacher Working Conditions Survey that every teacher takes in North Carolina, as well as the Insight Survey that gets a little bit more down and dirty, nitty gritty, more detailed type information. So some of the strengths as far as teacher empowerment was that teachers feel encouraged to participate in leadership roles. There is a lot of encouragement. There may not be a lot of actual involvement, but there is a lot of encouragement and push from the administrative team to try to get teachers involved in leadership roles. And they also feel that they're relied upon to help make decisions about educational issues. I know in my research, some of those things have been like when we were coming together as one school, being able to write the mission and vision statements for the school and all the committees to help kind of build the school up again when we're coming back together as one. So that's part of where that comes from. Some of the areas, because I thought I had missed a slide. That's okay. There were some areas of weakness in that as far as empowerment, like while they, I don't know where that slide went, but while they felt encouraged to participate in leadership roles, some still felt that there weren't enough available, like weren't enough leadership roles available. And I know in the Insight Survey where teachers were able to actually type out, not just choose an option, but they could type how they felt about something or give actual feedback. One of the pieces of feedback was that they felt that even though there were leadership roles available, they were only given to certain people. And so they didn't feel like they were eligible for it, or maybe not in the right group of people or the right clique to use lingo. Like that's just how they felt. So that was kind of an area of weakness that that could be focused on as far as trying to improve that. Yeah. In regards to leadership, though, teachers felt that they were held to high professional standards for delivering instruction, that there's a lot of rigor and that the administrative team looks for rigor in all of the classrooms, and that they feel like there's a standard that they need to reach in order to be successful. They also feel that they are recognized for their accomplishments. I believe this shows up in a weakness as well. It's kind of a half and half. Some really felt that they were recognized, and some felt that maybe they weren't recognized enough, or they were only recognized for certain things and maybe not others. Teachers also agreed that leadership facilitates using data to improve student learning. That's a big thing right now, is the data push. So that was definitely a big strength in leadership. Again, some of those areas for improvement, though, I know I kind of touched on one, but teachers don't always feel comfortable raising issues and concerns. Either they're not sure who to go to, or they don't know if they should go to someone or how it should be approached. They also don't feel that school leadership consistently supports teachers, that it's just, and based again on that data, that it's, I mean, for lack of a better word, it's just not consistent, that they'll get it in some areas, not in others, or some will get it, some won't. Just there's this lack of consistency and cohesion there.
Okay, and you know if that was that pulled through with like the open-ended questions?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. Yeah, that's where so it's actual people typing in their responses to state how they feel. And then teachers feel that the leaders of the school don't seek out feedback from teachers. And I know that kind of contradicts where teachers felt that they could give advice on an educational system, but this feedback was more towards their specific classrooms, and where the other was like the school as a whole, giving advice about the school as a whole, mission and vision statements, committees, stuff like that. But this was more, they don't feel that the administrative team or leaders want the feedback from the teachers of what's going on in their classroom or how they feel about an evaluation that just happened. That's that type of feedback. Yeah. So I did have some of the recommendations. Some of my big recommendations came from this leadership area and teacher empowerment area. One of the big ones was to focus on the faculty advisory committee that we have here. We just call it the FAC. That's a committee that is used for when teachers have a concern that needs to be addressed to administration or even maybe a district level. They go to the faculty advisory committee chairperson, and then that's kind of the middleman so that the teachers don't have to go directly to the principal or to the district. They have someone that will do that for them and can remain anonymous if needs be. Yeah, gotcha. Safe space, okay. Yeah. So I don't think all teachers realize that it is a safe space. Like I think they know it's there, but I don't know if they know what it's actually used for. So I think being able to push that a little bit more will give them that space so that they can feel like their feedback matters and feel like the administrative team wants that feedback. So they could be afraid. Yeah, yeah. Another was that in some of the data that I saw was that teachers didn't feel like the morale was very high. So one of the recommendations is for the principal to continue to boost morale. And I know he has started working on that, like with attendance, like if we have perfect attendance, giving us rewards, I guess. Jeans passes, free coverage, no coverage for a day, something like that. But to push that a little bit farther and move that past just attendance and do rewards for awesome things they're seeing in the classroom or things that students are saying, something like that.
Yeah, I would like to see more student responses. Yeah. Says a lot.
Right, because the students are who sees the teachers all the time. So yeah, so that was definitely one big recommendation. Also, the administration would have a more open door policy. A lot of times they're hard to find, or they may be in their offices, but you don't know because their door is closed. But just to be able to feel more available so that someone feels more comfortable going. Yeah, more approachable. And then the big one for teacher empowerment was to give more options for teachers to have input in professional development. I know in the past, even looking at older data, there was a lack of buy-in for the professional development topics, that people didn't feel like it was relevant. So giving more options, maybe making a survey or something for teachers to give ideas of what we could do for professional development, or having different teachers choose different areas for professional development, maybe not making one and everybody goes to this, but giving options so that way they feel more like they're getting more out of it and helping to build themselves rather than.
So with something like that, would an option be, are they considering more the relative data from these surveys? Are they wanting more relevancy in their meeting with the professional development, or are they wanting more options as far as wanting to do like online courses and things like that where they can choose what is relevant to them? Do you know?
It didn't get that specific. Okay. But I do know that they want professional development that's going to actually help them in their classroom in their specific subject. So whether that means online or not, they didn't specify. That data wasn't specified. Facilities was another one of those major areas, and some of the strengths was that teachers do feel that they have access to digital content and resources. Like we have Canvas, we have online courses, we have Edgenuity, we have everything we need online, and they have access to that. Teachers feel that they have sufficient access to appropriate instructional resources. Teachers are willing to share resources, and new teachers coming in have a lot that they can access. So they do feel that they have that. And teachers also feel that they have access to all of the supplies that they need. That was a big one, that they feel like they have enough paper. They have somewhere they can go to get all the supplies that they need.
Good.
So that's good, because I know sometimes teachers have to go buy their own.
Right.
So it's nice that they feel that they have that ability to get it here without having to buy their own. A couple of the areas of improvement in this, though, are that teachers don't feel that the school environment as a whole is very clean and well maintained. And I know that's been an issue on the news in the past too. So that's definitely something to work on in the future. And teachers also don't feel that they have sufficient access to a broad range of professional support personnel. So they have an admin team, but do they have other people they can go to, like for their own professional support in their classroom?
Okay. Does it say more curriculum based, or do they mean more like a mentor? Do you know?
It didn't specify. That was one of the areas where it didn't give them an option to provide feedback. But just in talking to people in all of this research, I mean, it was kind of an all-encompassing. Resources, and we touched on resources in the other section, but resources specifically is that teachers felt that curriculum taught in the school is definitely aligned to North Carolina standard course of study, which is good. Because that's a requirement, so it's good that they agree with that. Teachers work in professional learning communities. That's a big push in North Carolina as well. I know me personally, coming here, I didn't know what a professional learning community was. That was new to me because we didn't have them in New York. So I love them, and I'm glad we use them here. They're very beneficial. Teachers believe that almost every student has the potential to do well on assignments. So that's a big thing, that there is, what's the word I'm looking for? Teachers don't automatically think that students aren't going to do their work and aren't going to succeed. They have that preconceived notion that they are going to succeed and put them at a higher standard to start.
They're not prejudging them.
Yes, prejudging. That's the word I was looking for. Yeah. And then teachers also feel that they are good with using digital content and resources in their instruction. We have a lot of stuff available to us. So a couple of the areas of improvement, though, is that they sometimes don't feel that they are assigned classes that maximize their likelihood of success. And I think where this stems from is some of this data came when the schools were still separated. And I know there was a feeling of the classrooms were stacked with some of the possible kids with behavior issues. So I think that's where that came from. I know it's a little bit different now that we're together and kids are dispersed a little bit more, but I think that was something that, I think that's where that came from. And teachers don't feel like they have the knowledge of content covered in instructional methods by other teachers at the school. They don't have the opportunity to go sit in on other teachers in their content area and see how other teachers are doing it. And I know that we've tried to do learning walks in the past, but that's hard with all math teachers having planning at the same time. So it's hard to get math teachers together with math teachers, and CTE with CTE, and history with history. Yeah,
that makes sense.
Yeah. Okay. So that was definitely an area of improvement to definitely think about and work on.
So do you think that possibly based off of the data that you've recovered from this or collected, do you think that teachers might benefit from maybe doing field trips to other schools where they can see that content area and maybe they can do it as almost like a team building thing?
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. I do know that a couple of teachers, as well as the principal, recently just went to another school to get data on a school that does really well in Math 1 specifically. Yeah, so they went to go see what is being done there, like how are they working together. And I think if more teachers than just the principal and the department chair we're able to go and see what's happening. Like, the principal and the department chair can go and bring info back, but if the teachers can physically see what's happening, I think there'd be a little bit more buy-in with that.
I agree. I think it's very beneficial, and I've noticed that a lot of the research that I've done with new teachers coming through, that their most beneficial opportunities were when they got to observe other teachers. So I think that definitely supports it.
Yeah, that's I agree. Time was another big one. There wasn't as much data with time, but I mean, I'm sure you can probably assume what the strengths and weaknesses are for those. But teachers feel that they have time to collaborate. I mean, we have the built-in PLC times, and so they have time to collaborate. We're all kind of in the same area. We're not dispersed around the school per se anymore, so we have time to talk. Teachers also feel that efforts are made to minimize the amount of paperwork, and I know that's definitely something recent too, because I know in the past, teachers have felt, based on data, that there was a lot of paperwork to do, and a lot of forms to fill out for this, and data to collect for this, but it's been kind of tidied up a little bit, especially coming together as one. It's less to have to do for this school and this school and this school. Like now it's just one time.
Less opportunities for breakdown.
Yes. Areas of improvement, though, is that they don't always feel like they have sufficient instructional time. And that's not necessarily, I mean, we have an hour and a half per block, but it's more so with like the testing and just time out of the classroom and different things happening, which is taking away from instructional time. Teachers don't feel protected from duties that interfere with their education or educating of students. So that's more like things happening during planning times, meetings scheduled during planning times, coverage, all that kind of stuff, where they're planning, where they should be figuring out what they're going to do in their lesson plans. They don't have that time in school anymore, or not enough of it. And then that kind of ties in this last bullet point too. The non-instructional time provided is not sufficient, I should say insufficient, that they don't feel like they have enough time in their planning. And the last area, I do have some more recommendations at the end, but the last big area was parent and community involvement. The strengths is that teachers do feel that the school does a good job of encouraging parent and guardian involvement. There may not be much of it actually happening, but they do encourage it. So they do feel that that's definitely a strength of the school. And that teachers feel that they themselves provide parents and guardians with useful information about student learning. That they feel like they share enough with parents to help them get involved or to keep them involved. There's the cheerleaders. Some of the areas of improvement, though, which is where a lot of the recommendations would come from, is that teachers don't feel that parents and guardians are influential decision makers in the school. And I know from my personal experience sitting in on like the school leadership team meetings in the past, that there's not very many parents involved in those. And you'll see a recommendation that I have for that in a second. But that there's not, just parents aren't getting as involved as they could be. So they feel like the parents aren't influential decision makers just because they're not involved. And teachers also don't feel like parents know what's going on in the school. Yeah, so that's a big one.
Do you think any additional messages and things like that going out would help with something like that?
And actually, that's one of my recommendations. Yeah, so some of my big recommendations, which kind of encompass a lot of these areas too, not necessarily just parent involvement, but this is something that would kind of have to be worked out. We'd have to know if it's approved by the district. So that's kind of still in the works, but creation of a school Facebook page, just something that parents and students and community members all would have access to, where they could see things happening at the school, where teachers can post things that are going on in their classroom. Maybe not necessarily student pictures, because I know that can get kind of iffy, but just posting student work that's happening in there, or places where people can share information. That's still kind of I'm not sure if that's something we can actually do. It's kind of still in the works, but editing the current school website to make it more user-friendly. I know in the past it's just kind of been a data dump and that's it. But having like an updated announcements, an updated calendar, updated links and information, places where they can go, updated teacher websites, just stuff like that. The use of Remind or Class Dojo in a classroom setting where teachers can share information real quick with parents and just send a quick message out to all parents or all students just to let them know what's going on in the classroom, or even like a school-wide reminder like that, which kind of ties into the Connect Ed messages. I know our principal sends those out a couple times a week, the recorded messages, just to let people know what's going on. But just editing those, because I know, I mean, I've heard that people block that phone number now because they're tired of hearing those messages, but the messages aren't always relevant to everybody, and it's going out to, 2,000 and some people. But editing those messages to be more geared toward what they need to be, like maybe having, instead of just all people piled into one inbox, maybe separating it so that we have an inbox for just seniors and senior parents, or just freshmen and freshman parents, or do a full community-wide message, and segregating those messages so that not everybody is getting everything all at the same time. It's a little bit more work on the end of the person recording the messages. They have to do a couple more messages, but at the same time, it's making it easier and more available to those who are receiving it, making them more apt to listen to it and get the info. As far as parent involvement, changing the times of parent programs. A lot of times they're happening like right as parents are getting out of work, or they've gotten out of work, but now they're home making dinner for their family. Maybe coming up with some other option, maybe not necessarily weeknights, maybe weekends, mornings and the weekends, something where it's a little less of a hindrance for them or a bombardment in their family life. And then creating also new opportunities for parent and community involvement, not just a random open house once or twice a year, but like movie nights with your kids, or maybe a curriculum day or something where parents can come and see work posted around the classroom. Not necessarily an open house where they're meeting and having parent conferences, but just coming and seeing what kids are doing, like taking a little tour of maybe if the CTE department does something really cool, having parents come and just kind of tour the CTE department to see what's happening.
So highlighting some of the areas. I like that.
I think that's it for my main little recommendations. But my biggest goal, the biggest goal in all of this, is to continue to increase student growth and kind of fill that achievement gap, and just make sure that the rigor is always there, and that there's always opportunities to grow a student. Like, yes, we need to empower teachers, but we're empowering teachers so that the student growth can exceed where it's at and fill that achievement gap. And we're trying to get parents involved, not just because they should be, but because getting parents involved can in turn help grow students and fix that achievement.
I think all of the components work well to support that. Everything that you've covered.
Well, thank you. Do you have any questions or anything for me? I know you asked some. Do you have any others for me?
I asked some, but well, first of all, I'm not familiar with Dojo. So explain now when I get here with Dojo.
Class Dojo, I'll go back. I think that was on the last slide. It's kind of like Remind. I have only kind of heard that one in passing. I haven't done much with it yet, but it's very similar to Remind. You can break up your classes into sections and post different things for different classes and send information out. It's just another platform like Remind.
Now, do you have any recommendations as far as, and I know this is probably going a little bit deeper into all of this, but on one of the slides you were talking about how the teachers don't have enough time. But then when we're looking at some of these other things, it would require more time. But I'm wondering if some of these can't be facilitated where teachers are already heading up certain things like student council or something like that, and this can't just kind of roll under some of those clubs and things like that. I mean, you think that would work?
I think so. I mean, in certain aspects. I mean, there are some, like we couldn't really rely on students to edit the current, like the school website or anything like that, because I know that's a district level thing.
Right.
But maybe setting up a remind or something like that, having the kids or those clubs get something set up and get information put in, like that would be, I like that idea.
What about the Facebook page? Do you think something like that would work if they were being supervised by a teacher?
So. I think so. I mean, especially because we have kids that are in those like technological CTE classes that are doing online stuff and making games and web design and all that. That would be something.
I think it would be a great place to have those other things. And some of the parents, I don't know if the data supports this, but I think it would, that a lot of the parents are on Facebook and not as much as the kids.
Probably.
So that might give the parent and the community more opportunities to be able to see what's going on in places that they can plug into.
I agree. And that was my thought with the Facebook page, was to get, I know a lot of kids are all in Snapchat and Instagram and stuff right now, not as many are on Facebook, but parents are. Yeah. So giving them that opportunity to see what's happening in a format that they're used to and that's more social.
No, I think this is great. And if there's any sort of photography club or anything that I know a big presence of visual arts and things like that in the schools. So I think something like that would be fabulous.
Yeah. That'd be great.
Yeah. Well, this is good. And I think business communities might enjoy hearing some of these highlights too, because I know that there's apprenticeship programs and things like that. So having that information available to a lot of the parents, I know that there's a breakdown in communication between student and parent.
Right.
And if the messages, if they're feeling like they're bombarded by the messages, then something like this would allow them to go on one source and see a lot of different things. I can see a really good, it's a really good idea. So I don't think I have any other questions. A lot of great information and stuff that I can use.
Okay. Well, thank you for
appreciate that.
Again being willing to meet with me.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Turn this recording on.